Good morning from Washington, D.C. Larry O'Connor here with Town Hall Media, and thanks for joining us as we go live now to Mar-a-Lago. As you can see, we're waiting for a press conference from President Trump and potentially members of his cabinet or his military advisors to give the first official announcement with regard to our military action in Caracas, Venezuela. It occurred at, before the crack of dawn, Eastern time this morning, and it resulted in the removal of President Maduro from his reign of terror in that nation. We're told right now that not one single U.S. troop was lost in this military action. Maduro is no more. The people of Venezuela woke up to this news and began cheering literally from their balconies and from their rooftops and taking to the streets to celebrate this moment. We'll show you some astounding footage from that in a moment. First, though, here's what we first learned from the president as he put out a statement on Truth Social and on X social media. I'll read you the statement. The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolás Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. That's very noteworthy. In fact, coming up, we're going to be joined by a retired military intelligence officer, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer. He's going to shed some expertise on this entire operation, the military aspects of it, as well as the narco-terrorism that we're defeating over there in South America right now. Tony has a history of being involved in these types of operations, in the war on terror as well as the war on drugs. And the fact that Maduro and his wife were captured and flown out of the country, I think is relevant. We'll get into that. He also says, this is also relevant, the operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement, meaning FBI and DEA, I'm assuming. Details to follow. There'll be a news conference today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump, in case you didn't know. And as I said, we've got the live feed from Mar-a-Lago. It's sitting right now with this graphic saying that they will begin shortly. And the moment that begins, you'll see it right here. The president did phone into Fox and Friends this morning. It was a lengthy 20-minute-plus interview. But we do have a couple of snippets of it that are noteworthy, including the president's role here watching in what can only be described as a makeshift situation room at Mar-a-Lago, which is sort of the secondary White House right now for Trump 47. Here's what he said.
I've never seen anything like this. I was able to watch it in real time, and I watched every aspect of it, and I listened to the communication between, where we were in Florida and out in the field in Venezuela. And it was amazing to see the professionalism, the quality of leadership, the professionalism. General Raisin Kane is fantastic. Don't forget, we did another one not so long ago. It was called the knocking out of the Iranian nuclear threat, the nuclear power. And that was unbelievable what they did there. And this is something that, I don't know, it's amazing. And to have a few injuries, but no death on our side is really amazing.
All right, so there's the initial report there. A few injuries, he says. We'll get more details on that. But not one death from the U.S. side. Not one U.S. troop lost their life in what can only be described as a surgical strike, specifically targeting to decapitate the leadership that was still holding on to their authoritarian power, the Maduro regime. Again, he and his wife have been captured and flown out of the country. Who knows? They could be negotiating some sort of exile right now, or they are preparing him for some sort of war crime or tribunal. We'll see how that sorts out. Amazing scenes from the streets of Venezuela. This is in Spanish, but there are some captions. And it's a remarkable thing as people just left their homes still in their pajamas.
Esto no tiene comparación. Gracias, Dios mío. Gracias, Dios. Me arrodillé y lloré en mi casa por él. Es un milagro.
Muchas gracias. Por aquí también vemos parte de la juventud venezolana en lágrimas porque hace rato sonaba una canción en la que todos nos pusimos prácticamente a llorar aquí en el arepaso del Doral. Cuéntame qué se...
mucha emoción, el ambiente es impresionante y el ambiente te cautiva y uno estar en el momento y tener esto como una experiencia única en la historia es increíble.
¿Cuántos años tienes?
19.
Parte de tu vida o tu vida entera la has vivido ya esperando que esto suceda. ¿Cuántos años tienes viviendo aquí en Estados Unidos?
Tenía 11 años.
¿Tus padres en dónde están?
¿Disculpa?
¿Tus padres están aquí contigo?
Sí, mis padres están acá. Ellos vinieron, mi papá fue alcalde de la oposición y fue perseguido político y bueno, él vino para acá para simplemente huir y que nosotros tengamos una buena educación. Y es muy loco que de un día para otro yo a las 2 de la mañana parado, de la nada veo un video y después veo otro video y yo dije, está pasando en realidad. Es muy surreal, pero lo que hay que disfrutarlo.
Yeah, I'd say you have to enjoy it and surreal. Yeah, we've got some of those videos of the strike that we're now seeing on social media as well, showing U.S. military helicopters engaged in some firefights in Caracas. We'll share those with you coming up in a bit as well, because I want to get the expertise of Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer and his military experience involved in commenting on those videos. So stand by for that. And also, once again, we are standing by for the president, who will be addressing the world live from Mar-a-Lago as this successful military strike from U.S. troops to decapitate the leadership of the authoritarian regime in Venezuela has been executed flawlessly, it appears. We've also got some other incredible images. Take a look at this one here. It speaks for itself. This morning after sunrise, when the news came down, you see this all the time in authoritarian regimes, the cult of personality, the almost Orwellian Big Brother-esque appearance of the dictator there on posters all over the country. And Venezuelans took to the streets, climbed up on top of that billboard, and tore down the sign, tore down the image and the poster of Nicolás Maduro as citizens locked in deadlock on the streets because there's so much celebration you can't move, jump out of their car and celebrate and applaud. There's something about freedom that's kind of intoxicating, isn't it? And this is the dawn of a new era of possibilities for this nation, Venezuela. They were rich. They were a rich, prosperous country thanks to the oil companies that from the United States of America and some from Britain who helped explore and discover oil and set up pumps and refineries and entire shipping lanes for oil from that country. They got rich, they got fat, they got happy, and then they elected a communist in Hugo Chavez, and the entire thing fell apart. And now they're bankrupt and poor. I've visited some of the islands in the South Caribbean where our Navy has been staging for the last several weeks to get ready for this strike. And there are refineries in countries down there like in Curacao and in Aruba that have been sitting dormant. You can stand on those islands and see the coast of Venezuela. These are refineries that used to be, vibrant and active with employment and gas flowing, taking in the oil from Venezuela, refining it into petrol and gasoline, and then distributing it all around the world, and nothing has been happening for years and years and years. And the President of the United States, President Trump, put out a statement just a few weeks ago citing those oil wells, the oil pumps, the oil exploration and discovery apparatus that was paid for and installed by United States corporations, of course, with some assistance from the United States government. And Trump said that those have been stolen, not just by Maduro, but by the Chavez regime as well. Those communists took over and they took control of everything. They seized it all. It wasn't theirs. They stole it, and now there is an opportunity for this country, led by the woman who just won the Nobel Peace Prize for her resistance efforts in Venezuela, and she's been a huge fan of President Trump's efforts in liberating that nation. They now have an opportunity to move toward freedom and democracy with the assistance of the United States of America. And I also want to point out that if you've traveled to Venezuela, not to Venezuela, but if you've traveled to Latin America, if you've traveled to the Caribbean seas, you see an unmistakable and indelible footprint on all of those tiny nations. You see China. China is everywhere. China has operation of part of the Panama Canal right now. China has giant embassies that can only be seen as intelligence gathering operations in these tiny little Caribbean nations. What does China care about a little island in the Caribbean, right? And they come in and they build cricket stadiums for them or soccer stadiums for them. They build roads for them, and the corrupt government say, sure, China, come on in. Give us all this free stuff and build these roads for us and build these cricket stadiums for us. And the people are fat and happy. And meanwhile, China is building this giant, enormous footprint right in our backyard. I mean, literally in our backyard. And it's time for the U.S. to get re-engaged in Latin America. We've had all these international escapades halfway around the world, in Afghanistan and in the Middle East and God knows where, even Africa. Meanwhile, in our very own backyard, our hemisphere, our neighbors, 200 miles off of our coast of Florida has been infiltrated by China. So this is a sign that Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and, of course, the President of the United States, they have put a focus now on regaining control and influence in our hemisphere, where it matters most. We sadly have neglected Latin America for decades, really. So that image, that sign that you see right there is a remarkable one, to say the least. For those of you who are just joining our live stream, we're awaiting the press conference from Mar-a-Lago. The president has announced it. It was scheduled to begin at 11 a.m., and right now they're about 13 minutes late, which is fine. A lot of business to take care of, I would think. I do want to show you a little bit of the scenes that we're seeing right now, that most of these are from foreign language television, all right, because mostly it's foreign language or Spanish-speaking television networks that have apparatus and footholds in Venezuela, in Caracas, the capital. But take a look at this. It appears as though it was Telemundo International that broadcast this. And I'll leave the commentary out because we're speaking English here. But take a look at the firepower from the ground. We've got some homemade social media video from people in Caracas, just people with smartphones who shot images of the U.S. military helicopters as they were flying overhead. We've got some images of the firepower from that perspective. But this right here so far is the only images on the ground experiencing the firepower firsthand, and it's from these television crews from Telemundo and other international groups that have a presence there, a press presence. Again, this was roughly around 3-4 in the morning when this operation took place overnight between January 2nd and January 3rd. And we'll let this run here so you can see what things look like. And remember, Maduro basically seized control. Oh, here's some of the images of the helicopters, as we mentioned, the military helicopters. We're getting conflicting reports as to whether these are Army or Marine Corps special operations that executed this. I'm sure that we'll get more details from the press conference, especially assuming Secretary of War Pete Hegseth is there. Let's see if this guy happens to be speaking English. I doubt it.
Tensión, la gente no ha salido de sus hogares, aunque hemos visto.
Yeah, I ain't going to try with my second year of high school Spanish to translate for you, but that poor dude, if he's part of the Venezuelan military and he's like left there to sort of clean up the mess there, and yeah, hold tight. If tanks come rolling down the street, you're in charge, buddy. Yeah, it's not going to end well for him. I'm glad he's got the jungle fatigues on, though, because that's going to help him in the middle of downtown Caracas. So Nicolás Maduro, of course, lost the last election. Not that they've had free and fair elections, but even with the deck stacked against an actual free and fair election, Maduro lost, but he refused to concede defeat. This was years ago, and he decided to hold on to power because he's a dictator. Now, it's interesting and instructive as we prepare to see what the reaction will be from the political left here in the United States of America. It's instructive to see how they reacted back when we had the first international crisis when Maduro refused to leave. Here was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and you would think, power to the people, protect democracy at all costs. It should be a no-brainer for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to come out and say, yeah, Maduro's got to go. He's corrupt. He's a totalitarian. People are starving. He's killing people. He's lawless. He's a kleptocrat. He's a head of a narco-terrorist ring. He has to go. But take a listen to the nuanced language that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, which I believe signals what we're going to get from the American political left, personified by the Democrat Party, now embodied in Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Zohran Mamdani. What we're going to hear from them in the next 48 hours as the dust settles here. Objectively speaking, this is a great thing that happened, and it is in line with American foreign policy, not just in the Trump administration, but in the Biden administration as well. It's just that Biden didn't do anything about it. The only planes Biden sent down to Caracas were empty passenger jets that he filled up with criminals that Maduro was trying to get rid of and narco-terrorists. He then flew them here to America to wreak havoc, all under the guise of asylum and a refugee program for Venezuelans who were fleeing Maduro. But they weren't fleeing Maduro. They were all members of Tren Aragua. I sure hope I pronounced that right. And they were narco terrorists, and many of them were caught and convicted of murders. Many of them got away with murder only until the Trump administration came in and captured them, and then sent them to Venezuela in the El Salvador in the CCOT prison. So you would think this would be a no-brainer. This is all in line with American foreign policy, but take a listen to the language that AOC was using when Maduro defied the election results and retained power, because the American left, politically represented by the Democrats, they're always going to lean toward supporting the Marxists, whether here in America or around the world. Remember how the left embraced Hugo Chavez, who is, objectively speaking, he was a mass murderer. And Pol Pot level of terror that he reigned over that regime. But they embraced him. Why? Because he was a Marxist. So listen to AOC. This was, again, a couple of years ago when Maduro refused to leave.
As a democratic socialist, I'm wondering what are your thoughts on the Venezuelan crisis that's happening right now, and if you would denounce the Maduro regime?
Yeah, so I think that this is absolutely a complex issue. I think it's important that we approach this very carefully. One, I'm myself, just like anyone else, who is absolutely concerned with the humanitarian crisis that's happening. And I think it's important that any solution that we have centers the Venezuelan people and centers the democracy of Venezuelan people first. I am very concerned about U.S. interventionism in Venezuela, and I oppose it.
There you go. It's a nuanced situation, a lot of gray area. It's not black and white. It's not cut and dry. But one thing I know for sure, I oppose the U.S. doing anything about it. Well, it's not very nuanced then, is it? That's what you should expect to see from the American political left. All right. Earlier today, as I mentioned, the president did call in. Once again, I want to remind you, we are waiting for the White House live feed from Mar-a-Lago, and we'll go to it live the second it comes in. But here's what it looked like earlier today when the president called into Fox and Friends and announced the 30,000-foot view and sort of the rough draft of this event. Hang on.
President Trump, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning.
So you've had quite a busy evening. Tell us about it.
It was slightly busy, I would say. It was very dark all over, especially in Venezuela. The team did an incredible job. They rehearsed and practiced like nobody's ever seen. And I was told by real military people that there's no other country on earth that can do such a maneuver. If you would have seen what happened, I mean, I watched it literally like I was watching a television show. And if you would have seen the speed, the violence, they say that, the speed, the violence, they use that term. It's it was an amazing thing, an amazing job that these people did. There's nobody else could have done anything like it.
You're at Mar-a-Lago right now. How were you able to watch this?
Well, we watched it from a room. We had a room, and we watched it, and we watched every aspect of it. We were surrounded by lots of people, including generals, and they knew everything that was happening, and it was very complex, extremely complex, the whole maneuver, the landings, the number of aircraft, which were a massive number, the number of helicopters, a different type of helicopters, different type of fighter jets. We had a fighter jet for every possible situation. And they just broke in, and they broke into places that were not really able to be broke into, with steel doors that were put there for just this reason, and they got taken out in a matter of seconds. I've never seen anything like it, actually.
And you were able to watch this in real time.
Yeah, and don't forget, I've done some pretty good ones in other parts of the world, okay? I've done some pretty good ones, but I've never seen anything like this. I was able to watch it in real time, and I watched every aspect of it, and I listened to the communication between, where we were in Florida and out in the field in Venezuela. And it was amazing to see the professionalism, the quality of leadership, the professionalism. General Raisin Kane is fantastic. Don't forget, we did another one not so long ago. It was called the knocking out of the Iranian nuclear threat, the nuclear power. And that was unbelievable what they did there. And this is something that, I don't know, it's amazing. And to have a few injuries, but no death on our side is really amazing.
Mr. President, critics will say that strong action can risk escalation, but history has shown us that weakness can truly invite chaos. And this military operation clearly sends a message to our adversaries around the world, China, Iran, Russia, that we are no longer the weak administration that we had for 4 years under former President Biden, who tolerated narco-terrorism. What is next for the United States and Venezuela?
Well, we're very strong, and very importantly, if you look at drugs through the oceans, through the seas, they're down 97%. That's the boats. It's sort of related to this, as you know. The drugs are way down, and it's getting very, very tough. It's a whole different look. We have a whole different country. We have a country now that's respected. We have a country. I built the military in my first term, and they gave a little chunk of it away, but it was a lot. But it was a little chunk relative to what we built. But they gave it to Afghanistan so stupidly. It was one of the. Compare this to Afghanistan, where we were a laughing stock all over the world. We're not a laughing stock anymore. No, we have the greatest military in the world by far. We have the greatest military equipment in the world by far. And you had to see this in real time. You had to see this, the professionalism and the bravery, everything about it. And you're
muted there, Larry.
Thank you. That was President Trump about an hour ago on Fox and Friends. Bit of a stream of conscious thing, but he keeps going back to the same themes, which is the professionalism, the professionalism and steel-eyed focus and operation that our U.S. military executed this plan. And obviously, anyone who's been around with or exposed to the U.S. military knows these are the best of the best, absolute professionals. And they've had weeks to prepare for this. They've been gearing up in the Caribbean Sea, moving an armada of Navy vessels there, which one presumes right now the airstrikes and helicopters were launched from those aircraft carriers. It's all very close there. Like I said, you can go to the Dutch islands of Curacao, Aruba, Bonaire, and you can see the coast of Venezuela from there. And that's all international waters and the Caribbean Sea, and it's certainly a part of the world that we do regular military exercises. And in fact, this is the kind of operation that the U.S. military trains for over and over and over again. And you could be in the military for decades, train for this kind of operation, and actually never execute it. That's what we do. That's what the U.S. military does, is constantly train for operations like this. And once in a while, Well, in this case, once every 25 years, you get a chance to actually execute a plan like this. And I say 25 years because it was 25 years ago when Venezuela was taken over, sadly, through an election, but taken over by an authoritarian dictator, a Marxist, a communist, Hugo Chavez. And then from that point forward, there was never a free and fair election again. That's what happens. Keep your eye on New York City in that regard, if I may. Can I just take a quick moment? I want to show you some of the celebrations. Again, most of this is in Spanish, but right here, I've got a translation for you.
Yes. Yeah, come celebrate with us. We love everybody because you, America, has loved us so much. So much. Thank you, America.
Igor, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing those sentiments. Guys, this is something.
Okay, that one was in English, and that may be from South Florida, where there's a huge Venezuelan community of Venezuelans who have been able to flee, and these are legitimate refugees, by the way, who fled the communist regime and have been able to seek asylum here in the United States of America. And how about that? Very rarely, we're promised this all the time when the U.S. military does something to help people in a foreign land. We're always told that the people will take to the streets and they'll love America and they'll shower us with roses and they'll be grateful and loving us for doing what only we could do. And I've just got some audio pop up here. Where did that come from? Hang on. Sorry about that. And this time they're really doing it. They're really saying it. Come celebrate with us. We love America because you, America, has loved us so much. Thank you, America. By the way, young man, I'm thinking you are in the United States. Thank you for learning English while you were here, too. There's something to be said for that. There's videos on TikTok now showing the scenes in the street. Scenes in the street of Venezuela. Now, this again is as the military strike occurred. And look at the jam traffic, people in the streets, and this is all before sunrise. But word got out very quickly that the U.S. had come, and they had come to free the people of Venezuela and to get rid of their dictatorial regime, the Maduro regime. Look at those scenes of the mass of humanity. And again, I reflect back on the message from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, not after this military strike, not after the actual liberation of the people of Venezuela, but back when Maduro refused to leave power after the corrupt and fraudulent election. And what was her reaction? It's a nuanced situation. There's a lot of gray area there. One thing I know for sure is I oppose American interventionism. And yet, does this look like gray area? Does this look like it's a coin flip? Does this look like, the people of Venezuela, they're kind of torn, I don't know. Could go either way. Sure, some of them might not like Maduro, but they sure don't like free markets and capitalism and freedom. Look at these scenes. People have likened it to Venezuela winning the World Cup. I want that overhead shot one more time here. It's coming up in a second. There it is. Look at that with a makeshift parade that has broken out. Absolutely phenomenal. Here's another scene after sunrise. That obviously is somebody live streaming as the celebration continues in downtown Caracas. I think this is right outside the presidential palace. Incredible if you think about it. As we all went to bed last night, I don't know about you, but I was watching mesmerized at the sights that were going on in the streets of Tehran and in over 60 cities across the Persian landscape in the Republic of Iran, as you saw protests that began about a week ago grow larger and larger and larger. You, of course, know the President of the United States put out a statement earlier this week saying if the Iranian regime turned their guns and killed innocent protesters in the streets, we would have something to say about. That emboldened more Iranians, more Persians to take to the streets and call for the end of the Iranian regime. They were tearing down the Iranian flag They were and continuing their protests all through the night. And the exiled crown prince of the Shah of Iran, who has lived in America since 1977, in Northern Virginia, by the way, right outside the nation's capital, he appeared in Egypt to a throng of Egyptians and Persians who had left Iran, celebrating him, and they're flying the old flag of Iran, not with the Islamic symbols and language on it, but with the gold lion and sword that was the symbol of the old Shah of Iran, the monarch. And now the crown prince, who's been in exile all this time, I think he's in his 60s, he's poised to take over should this revolution be successful. So we go to sleep last night with the thought that maybe Iran might finally throw off their totalitarian Islamic regime, murderous state sponsors of terror for the last, 50 years. And then we wake up this morning seeing Venezuela liberated. Just an incredible turn of events here. And if you look at where Latin America is right now, partially through this action, but also through free and fair elections in various countries that we've seen just in the last couple of months, where the pro-freedom, pro-liberty, Trump-friendly candidate has won in those countries that still have free and fair elections. The face of South America is changing before our very eyes. If you're part of the communist regime in Cuba right now, you are looking over your shoulder, my friend. And by the way, cannot say it enough, and we're waiting for the press conference from Mar-a-Lago. I have no doubt Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be there and will have something to say, because Secretary of State Rubio, first of all, is the child of Cuban refugees. He has been speaking out his entire political career about the Marxists, not just in Cuba, but in Venezuela and in other corrupt, dysfunctional, broken countries all through Latin America and Central America. And when he became Secretary of State, Lord knows he's wearing a lot of hats, but one of his main priorities was to re-engage south of our border in our backyard. And this is a result of his focus there and convincing the President of the United States that this needs to be a priority for multiple reasons. This is a great day, not just obviously for the freedom-loving people of Venezuela, but for the people of the United States as well. All right, a little bit more. We'll pop back into the interview that President Trump gave to Fox and Friends just about an hour ago. As I just want to remind you, we are waiting. As soon as they go live, you will see it right here at Town Hall Media on The Larry Show. We'll go straight to the press conference the second it happens. But let's go back to the interview that President Trump gave earlier today to Fox and Friends, picking it up right where we left off.
Almost couldn't hold them back. It was like they wanted to go so badly, and most people would have said, I'll take a pass. I know that Charlie would have wanted to go because Charlie's a very brave person, but I know a lot of other people would have said, I think I'll pass on this one. Let's
hold on. I love that shout out to Charlie Kirk. How beautiful. Oh, or was he talking about Charlie Hurt, who's on the sofa there this morning for Fox and Friends? Not sure. But I want to interrupt that with this. This just in from President Trump's X account. Look at this image, my friends.
That's unbelievable.
That is now exiled and captured Nicolás Maduro, the president, former dictator of Venezuela. And you can see he is handcuffed, he is blindfolded, he has earmuffs on so he cannot hear anything. They did give him a bottle of water, and he is aboard the USS Iwo Jima right now. So there was a lot of speculation when it said he's been captured and he is no longer in the country. People thought that maybe he was, they granted him exile in Paraguay or in some other friendly country. I don't think any country down there wants anything to do with him. That used to be the sort of standard operating procedures when you had a Banana Republic dictator who finally the people had risen up and there was a coup against them, or if the United States, through our covert operations, got rid of them, we would negotiate some sort of exit strategy. And I have no doubt Maduro could have played that card over the last several weeks. He could have played some sort of negotiated, okay, fine, I'll leave. Just, give me some sort of soft, cushy landing somewhere on an island, and I'll, be in exile as a former dictator. But he refused to do so. And but the fact of the matter is, I don't know any country in Latin America who would extend some kind of sanctuary to him because without the United States approval, because no one wants to be on our bad side right now. From the Iranian strike to this mission last night, we have proven in less than a year in the second term of President Donald J. Trump that we will not hesitate to do what is in our best interest and in the interest of our freedom-loving friends around the world, and we will do it fast, we will do it deadly, and we will succeed. And, well, that's a far cry from where we were with our former president, Joe Biden. Look at that image. What an amazing image. All right, we still wait for the press conference at Mar-a-Lago, so let's go back now and rejoin President Trump earlier this morning, about an hour and a half ago at Fox and Friends.
Let's watch it on television. It's been amazing to see how good they were, how professional they were, how incredible the equipment we have is. I mean, the level of equipment and to see how it worked so perfectly. And if you compare this to attacks on Iran over the years with helicopters crashing into each other, the whole thing was a mess. The Jimmy Carter situation, which was a mess, and every other situation compared to this, nobody's ever seen like this. Look, the Iranian attack, knocking out their nuclear power was big. We had peace in the Middle East, and we have it. Without that, you could never have peace in the Middle East. We knocked them out, and look what's happening now to Iran, but we knocked it out. That was, it could not have been better, and this could not have been better. I don't even know which is, these are both really important. If you think about equal and importance, I wonder how it's going to be rated. But knocking out the nuclear power of, think of it, they were ready. They were within 2 months. They would have been a nuclear power. And comparing that to this in a certain different way, I think this might have been actually more complex.
Well, it's
but
interesting.
that was something that was amazing.
It's interesting, Mr. President. We've looked, our own Lucas Tomlinson, our reporter here. I don't know if you knew this intentionally, but the capture of Maduro and his wife coincides with the 6th anniversary of your taking out the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's Qasem Soleimani. Interestingly, it's six years after. But let me ask you a question, Mr. President. Because,
by the way, that was the third thing, and we have a fourth. We got Soleimani. We have taken out so many. Look at what we did to the leader of ISIS, who's no longer with.
Armed forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolás Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones, like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer. All perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. It's Jay Clayton for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, like never before. These highly trained warriors operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea, just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in what's called a ready position. But they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. If you would have seen what I saw last night, you would have been very impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed, and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one service member was, more importantly, killed. The United States military is the strongest and most fearsome military on the planet by far. With capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no equipment like what we have. And you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills on average, 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela, and that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland. We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually. This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore. The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans, hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil. Right now, they're on a ship they'll be heading to, ultimately New York, and then a decision will be made, I assume, between New York and Miami or Florida. But we have people where the overwhelming evidence of their crimes will be presented in a court of law. And I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to take place. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. And you all saw it. In addition to trafficking gigantic amounts of illegal drugs that inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over, in particular, the United States, Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang, Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide, and he did indeed. They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complexes. They cut the fingers off people if they called police. They were brutal, but they're not so brutal now. And I just have to congratulate our military, Pete and everybody, and our National Guard, because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, where it was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, frankly, and now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had a killing. We had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago, a little bit of a different kind of a threat, but we haven't had a killing in a long period of time, 6-7 months. We used to have two, on average, 2 a week in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore. The restaurants are opening. Everyone's happy. They're going, they're walking their daughters, they're walking their children, their wives. They walk to restaurants. Restaurants are opening all over Washington, D.C. So I want to thank the National Guard. I want to thank our military. And I want to thank law enforcement. Been amazing. And they should do it with more cities. We're doing it, as you know, and we're doing it in Memphis, Tennessee right now, and crime is down. We've just sort of started a few weeks ago, but crime is down now 77%. And the governor of Louisiana called, great person, and he wanted us to help him, as you know, in a certain very nice part of Louisiana, and we have done that. And it was a rough section, and we have Crime down. I understand it's down to almost nothing already after 2.5 weeks. New Orleans, it's down to almost nothing. And we've only been there for 2.5 weeks. Can't imagine why governors wouldn't want us to help. We also helped, as you know, in Chicago, and crime went down a little bit there. We did a very small help because we had no working ability with the governor. The governor was a disaster, and the mayor was a disaster. But it knocked down crime. But we're pulling out of there. When they need us, we'll know. You'll know. You'll be writing about it. And likewise, Los Angeles, where we saved Los Angeles early on, where the head of the police department made a statement that if the federal government didn't come in, we would have lost Los Angeles. That's long after the fires. That's when they had the riots in Los Angeles. We did a great job. Got no credit for it whatsoever, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We don't need the credit. But we'll be pulling out when they need us. They'll call, or we'll go back if we have to. We'll go back. But we did a great job in various cities. But the place that we're very proud of is Washington, D.C., because it's our nation's capital. We took it from being a crime-ridden mess to being one of the safest cities in the country. But the gangs that they sent raped, tortured, and murdered American women and children. They were in all of the cities I mentioned, Tren de Aragua. And they were sent by Maduro to terrorize our people, and now Maduro will never again be able to threaten an American citizen or anybody from Venezuela. There will no longer be threats. For years, I've highlighted the stories of those innocent Americans whose lives were so heartlessly robbed by this Venezuelan terrorist organization. Really one of the worst. One of the worst, they say the worst. Americans like 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungari from Houston. Beautiful Jocelyn Nungari, what happened to her? They, as you know, they kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered by Tren de Aragua animals. They murdered Jocelyn and left her dead under the bridge. There was a bridge that will never be the same to so many people after seeing what happened. As I've said many times, the Maduro regime emptied out their prisons, sent their worst and most violent monsters into the United States to steal American lives. And they came from mental institutions and insane asylums. They came from prisons and jails. The reason I say both, they sound similar. Actually, prisons, a little bit more hostile, a little bit tougher. A mental institution isn't as tough as an insane asylum, but we got them both. They sent from their mental institutions. They sent from their jails, prisons. They were drug dealers. They were drug kingpins. They sent everybody bad into the United States, but no longer. And we have now a border where nobody gets through. In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and stole American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. They did this a while ago, but we never had a president that did anything about it. They took all of our property. It was our property. We built it. And we never had a president that decided to do anything about it. Instead, they fought wars that were 10,000 miles away. We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill, and the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country. Considered the largest theft of property in the history of our country. Massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, and we didn't do anything about it. I would have done something about it. America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did. Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. Potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries, and not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines, and the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump administration, we are reasserting American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago. The future will be, and we did this in my first term. We had great dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance right now. Everyone's coming back to us. The future will be determined by the ability to protect commerce and territory and resources that are core to national security. These are core to our national security. Just like tariffs are, they've made our country rich, and they've made our national security strong, stronger than ever before. But these are the iron laws that have always determined global power. And we're going to keep it that way. We will secure our borders. We will stop the terrorists. We will crash the cartels, and we will defend our citizens against all threats, foreign and domestic. Other presidents may have lacked the courage or whatever to defend America, but I will never allow terrorists and criminals to operate with impunity against the United States. This extremely successful operation should serve as warning to anyone who would threaten American sovereignty or endanger American lives. Very importantly, the embargo on all Venezuelan oil remains in full effect. The American Armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options until United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied. All political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just fair, even to their people. The dictator and terrorist, Maduro, is finally gone in Venezuela. People are free. They're free again. It's been a long time for them, but they're free. America is a safer nation. This morning, it's a prouder nation this morning because it didn't allow this horrible person and this country that was doing very bad things to us. It didn't allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere is right now a much safer place to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank General Raisin Kane. He's a fantastic man. I've worked with a lot of generals. I worked with some I didn't like. I worked with some I didn't respect. I worked with some that just weren't good. But this guy is fantastic. I watched last night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice. And I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to ask to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Finally, a commander-in-chief the world respects and the American people deserve. And as the president said, words can barely capture the bravery and the power and the precision of this historic operation. A massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly executed by the greatest Americans our country has to offer. American warriors are second to none, the best in the world and the best of our country. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, gallantry, and glory of the American warrior. I'm simply humbled by such men. And I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Raisin Kane, and all those Americans who stood watch last night. Our warriors are the elite of America, and again, President Trump has your back. No other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, could pull this kind of operation off. And no other president has ever shown this kind of leadership, courage, and resolve, the most powerful combination the world has ever seen. As the president said, our adversaries remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolás Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around and he found out. President Trump is deadly serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country. Deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people. Deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us. And deadly serious about reestablishing American deterrence and dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This is about the safety, security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people. This is America first. This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department is proud to help deliver it. Welcome to 2026, and under President Trump, America is back. I'd like to welcome now our chairman, Chairman Raising Cane, to give a few more details about the operation. Mr. Chairman.
We're going to stick with this press conference from Mar-a-Lago. Stay right here.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolás and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise, and conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that, frankly, only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades of experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged our unmatched intelligence capabilities and our years of experience in hunting terrorists, and we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets, in early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel so, as the president said, they could be brought to justice. And as the president said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings, but when tasked with a mission, this organization does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire joint force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49, and there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component is, was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit but remained flyable, and as the president said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission. As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up, and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. There were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board. And both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Iwo Jima. In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong. Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world. I am immensely proud today of our joint force and filled with gratitude to represent them here today. There is simply no mission too difficult for these incredible professionals and the families that stand by them and support them. As we stand here this morning, our forces remain in the region at a high state of readiness, prepared to project power, defend themselves, and our interests in the region. This operation is a testament to the dedication and unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. President.
That's General Dan Raisin-Kane,
Well, I don't have
head
much to
chief
add
of the
to what
Joint
we've heard now,
Forces.
other than the following points. Nicolás Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognized him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice with a $50 million reward, which I guess we saved $50 million. And
Sure.
yeah, exactly. But
Don't let anybody claim it.
but I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolás Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight. The other message here is the following. You have a guy, like many people around the world, they like to play games. You have a guy who decides he's going to invite Iran into his country, is going to, do the confiscation of American oil companies, is going to flood our country with gang members, is going to take Americans prisoner and try to hold them for hostage and trade them like he was able to do with the Biden administration. Basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen. And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president. The 47th president of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this, we're going to take. This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press conferences. And, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States. And the president addressed it. There's a president of peace, by the way. I told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now, very happy. But instead, he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think that the message here should be for the world. Look, the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody, but don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office, because it's not going to turn out well. And so I hope that, I guess that lesson was learned last night, and we hope it'll be instructive moving forward.
Is that a message for Cuba, Mr. President?
Please. Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but that's going to be paid. And we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly, and we're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
President, does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, they always say boots on the ground. Oh, so we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it. But we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain. This is a very dangerous attack. This is an attack that could have gone very, very badly. Could have gone very badly. We could have lost a lot of people last night. We could have lost a lot of dignity. We could have lost a lot of equipment. The equipment is less important, but we could have lost a lot. And we're going to make sure that this is proper. We're there now. We're ready to go again if we have to. We're going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judiciously, very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money. We're going to give money to the people. We're going to reimburse people that were taken advantage of. We're going to take care of everybody. It's very important. We couldn't let them get away with it. They stole our oil. We built that whole industry there, and they just took it over like we were nothing. And we had a president that decided not to do anything about it. So we did something about it. We're late, but we did something about it. Yeah, please.
Mechanism by which you're going to run the country? Are you going to designate a U.S. official to coordinate?
Yes, it's all being done right now. We're designating people. We're talking to people. We're designating various people, and we're going to let you know who those people are.
Would run Venezuela?
Well, it's largely going to be for a period of time the people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back. It's a dead. Talk about a dead country.
Rubio just got a new job.
Dead country. Now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're a country doing better than any country anywhere in the world, and it required leadership. Venezuela has a lot of bad people in there. A lot of bad people that shouldn't be leading. We're not going to take a chance that one of those people take over for Maduro. So you can look at, and others, we have fantastic people, including people in the military. So we're going to have a group of people running it until such time as it can be put back on track, make a lot of money for the people, and give people a great way of life, and also reimbursement for people in our country that were forced out of Venezuela.
Rubio would be...
You said earlier today that you weren't going to back Machado to come back and be the opposition leader in your Fox and Friends interview. And then you also mentioned the vice president of Venezuela. Are you going to work with the vice president of Venezuela, or how do you foresee the relationship
Well,
going?
I understand she was just sworn in, but she was, as you know, picked by Maduro. So Marco's working on that directly. He just had a conversation with her, and she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Very simple.
Mr. President, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass. And today, he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So, just what your message is about that?
Well, he has cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass.
Mr. President, did you notify any members of Congress in advance?
Marco, do you want to talk about that? Because you were involved in it.
Sure. We call members of Congress immediately after. This was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. It was a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night. We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days. But it's largely a law enforcement function. Remember, at the end of the day, at its core, This was an arrest of 2 indicted fugitives of American justice, and the Department of War supported the Department of Justice in that job. Now, there are broader policy implications here, but it's just not the kind of mission that you can pre-notify because it endangers the mission.
Plus, if I could add one thing to that,
Watch this live.
Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good. If they leaked, General, I think it would have been maybe a very different result. But I have to say, they knew we were coming at some point, you know. A lot of ships out there, they sort of knew we were coming. We went through. But Congress will leak, and we don't want leakers.
People to watch this all play out live. What was Maduro doing when the U.S. forces entered what I assume would be his home? And also, was there any point where the U.S. was considering, if Maduro pushed back or resisted, killing Maduro?
It could have happened. It could have happened. He was trying to get into a safe place. You know, the safe place is all steel. And he wasn't able to make it to the door because our guys were so fast. They went through the opposition so fast. And there was a lot of opposition. You know, people were wondering, do we get them by surprise? Sort of surprised, but they were waiting for something. It was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of gunfire. You saw some of it today. But he was trying to get to a safe place, which wasn't safe because we would have had the door blown up in about 47 seconds, they say on average, regardless of how thick the steel was. It was a very thick door. It was a very heavy door, but he was unable to get to that door. He made it to the door. He was unable to close it.
Wow.
Go ahead, finish.
To be in the time being right now, do you know his exact
Well,
whereabouts?
eventually, ultimately, in the near future, he's going to be brought to New York.
And where is he going to be held? Where is he going to be held in New York? Do you know?
That's going to be up to the officials that do these things.
Mr. President, the U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators without necessarily a plan for what comes afterwards.
Not with
Did
me.
that weigh on your decision?
Well, that's when we had different presidents, but with me, that's not true. With me, we've had a perfect track record of winning. We win a lot, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially peace in the Middle East because of that. If we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victory. You've had only victories. You've had no losses. Yeah.
How long do you expect the U.S. to run Venezuela, and how soon do you want the Venezuelan people to hold elections?
So I'd like to do it quickly, but it takes a period of time. You know, we're rebuilding. We have to rebuild their whole infrastructure. The infrastructure is rotted. It's actually very dangerous. It's blow-up territory. Oil is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing to take out of the ground. It can kill a lot of people. It has killed a lot of people doing just that. The infrastructure is old. It's rotted. Much of it is stuff that we put there 25 years ago, and we're going to be replacing it. And we're going to take a lot of money out so that we can take care of the country. Yeah.
Are you saying that Secretary Rubio and
Mr. President, China, Russia, and Iran have interests in Venezuela. How does this operation affect your relationships with them when
Well,
it
in
comes to
terms
the
of
oil and
China
drugs?
and Russia, Russia, when we get things straightened out. But in terms of other countries that want oil, we're in the oil business. We're going to sell it to them. We're not going to say we're not going to give it to them. In other words, we'll be selling oil, probably in much larger doses because they couldn't produce very much because their infrastructure was so bad. So we'll be selling large amounts of oil to other countries, many of whom are using it now, but I would say many more will come.
Wow.
Are you saying, Mr. President, are you
to the people
saying
of
that,
Venezuela?
Mr. President, are
Go
you
ahead,
saying
behind
that,
you, please.
Mr. President, thank you. What is your message to the people of Venezuela today? Of course, the civilian population specifically, they have a lot of questions. What is your message to the people of
That
Venezuela?
you're going to have peace, justice. You're going to have some of the riches that you should have had for a long period of time. It was stolen from you. But you're going to have peace and you're going to have safety. You're going to have justice. You're going to have a country. You're going to have a real country. You're going to have potentially a great country. You know, if you go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country. And they destroyed it. Remember I said that if we lose this election, the United States will be Venezuela on steroids. That's what would have happened. Had we lost the election, the 2024 election, we suffered so badly. When you look at the border from 2020, what they did, what Joe Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. But if we had to go through another year of that, we would be exactly where Venezuela was in terms. I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids, and that's what would have happened.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela, and will you be sending in U.S. military
They're going
troops
to be a
to provide?
team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro, and right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn in as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, we'll do whatever you need. I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this with Maduro, then leave like everybody else, leave and say, let it go to hell. If we just left, it has zero chance of ever coming back. We'll run it properly. We'll run it professionally. We'll have the greatest oil companies in the world go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money, use that money in Venezuela. And the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela. And also, I can't stress this strongly enough, the people that got thrown out of Venezuela that are now in the United States, and frankly, some want to stay and some probably want to go back, yeah.
In the country, and were any of the detained Americans?
Well, right now they're very
arrested?
protected because nobody's going to mess with us. They're very protected. The people of, and we let them know that you better not touch one of them.
Are you concerned that bad elements of the Maduro regime will remain in place?
Well, we know who they are. We're on them, and they're acting much differently now than they would have acted 2 days ago. Okay, wait, behind you, please.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America America first?
Well, I think it is because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world. And we want to make sure we can protect it. Yes, sir. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, is there a message here for Cuba and Diaz-Canel?
Well, Cuba is an interesting case. Cuba is, not doing very well right now. That system has not been a very good one for Cuba. The people there have suffered for many, many years. And I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now, very badly failing nation. And we want to help the people. It's very similar in the sense that we want to help the people in Cuba, but we want to also help the people that were forced out of Cuba and living in this country. Do you want to say something about that, Marco, please?
Well, I mean, I just gave you a statement a few minutes ago about, when the president speaks, you should take him seriously. So suffice it to say, Cuba is a disaster. It's run by incompetent, senile men, and in some cases, not senile, but incompetent nonetheless. It has no economy. It's in total collapse. And by the way, they were, all of the guards that helped protect Maduro, this is well known, their whole spy agency, all that were full of Cubans. I mean, it's amazing. This poor island took over Venezuela in some cases. One of the biggest problems the Venezuelans have is they have to declare independence from Cuba that tried to basically colonize it from a security standpoint. So, yeah, look, if I lived in Havana and I was in the government, I'd be concerned, at least a little bit. Well, the president already announced a week ago that anything that's sanctioned, it's sanctioned oil, it's not going to be allowed to get there. So that's a pre-existing.
The answer is yes. Yes.
This is amazing. This is an amazing performance.
Mr. President,
Mr.
President, on Monday.
Oh, I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect.
Mr. President,
is it possible that the U.S. ends up administrating Venezuela for years?
Well, it won't cost us anything because the money coming out of the ground is very substantial, so it's not going to cost us anything. We want safety there. We want to be surrounded by countries that aren't housing all of our enemies all over the world. That was happening, and you don't want to have that. But we're going to be rebuilding, and we're not spending money. The oil companies are going to go in. They're going to spend money. We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be it's going to be a very important. It's going to be a very important. This is a very big evening that took place last night. We have to be surrounded by safe, secure countries, and we also have to have energy. Very important. We have to have energy that's real energy, not where they're getting 4% and 5% of the energy out of the ground. You take a look. It was such a disaster. So what's going to happen with Venezuela, I think, over the next period of a year is going to be a great thing. And the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries.
Wow.
Going to send in
U.S. the political landscape.
Thank you. What did you last speak to Maduro about when you spoke? And is the
Well,
US
I don't want to get
at war
into
with
the
Venezuela?
conversations, but I did have conversations with him, and I said, you got to surrender. And I actually thought he was pretty close to doing so, but now he wished he did, yeah.
You said that Maduro is responsible for drug trafficking. You recently pardoned the former president of Honduras, who was convicted of many drug trafficking. Can you explain how these two situations are
Well,
different? And would you ever pardon Maduro?
I endorsed, as you know, the winning president, the man who won in Honduras. I endorsed the man who won in Chile. I endorsed the man who won in Argentina. And we are doing very well with that whole group. What the man that I pardoned was, if you could equate it to us, he was treated like the Biden administration treated a man named Trump. That didn't work out too well for them. This was a man who was persecuted very unfairly. He was the head of the country. He was persecuted very unfairly. And there are a number of them. And we felt that it was a very unfair situation that happened to him. He's also a party member of the man who won. So obviously the people liked what I did. And one of the reasons that was done is because of the fact that the party in power felt very strongly that that man was treated very badly. I studied it very quickly, and then I studied it in great detail. I went to a lot of the people standing behind me, and they felt that that man was persecuted and treated very badly. That's why I gave him a pardon.
You referenced boots on the ground earlier. Can you just sort of button this up? Do you envision the U.S. military having a presence in Venezuela as the U.S. runs that
Well,
country?
no, we're going to have a presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil, because we have to have, we're sending our expertise in. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground. And that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela and people from outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela. And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank you. Do you have one? Yes, please. You were so nice before. I'm going to give you the final question. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr.
Unless it's a
President.
bad question, in
It's
which
about
case I'll
Putin.
go one word. It's about who?
It's about Putin, if you want.
About Putin. Well, that's
Okay.
always nice
You had
to
a
talk
phone-
about Putin.
You had a phone call with him
Yeah.
on Monday. Did he talk at all about Maduro? Did y'all talk about this?
No, we didn't.
And
We
then-
never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not
intelligence.
thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people. I thought that would be so. I settled 8 1/4 war. You know what the 1/4 was? Thailand and Cambodia. I did it again. They broke out, and I did it in about 5 hours, and I settled it. I'm giving myself 1/4, so I'm up to now 8 1/4. In other words, I settled the war, but then they broke out. They had a pretty bad breakout over the last 4 days. I got them to go back to peace, so I only give 1/4. I thought the easiest one would be, one of the easier ones would be Russia, Ukraine. It's not, and they both have done some pretty bad things. And look, that's Biden's war. That's not my war. But I want to stop the lives. Did you see where last month, 30,000, it was 27,000 the month before. 30,000, mostly soldiers, were killed this last month. 30,000. I want to stop that. You know, I got NATO to pay 5% instead of the 2% that they weren't paying. They weren't paying 2, now they pay 5. And we send them a lot of munitions. We send them a lot of things, missiles and various other things, a lot. And they pay. The United States is not losing money. We're probably making money on that. It's the last thing I care about. I just want to stop all those people. We're losing 25, 30,000 human beings. They come from 2 places that are very far away. But if I can stop, because it's something I've been pretty good at doing, deals, I guess. It's all a deal. Life is a big deal. But If I can stop that war and stop 30,000 young people, in addition to the fact that people are being killed in Kiev, people are being killed in other cities throughout, a much smaller number, but they're being killed, viciously killed. So I'm not happy about it. I thought that would be something that would get solved. We have Mr. Witkoff here. I think that we're making progress, but that's a war that should have never happened. If I were president, it would have never happened. Putin says it. Everybody says it. If I were president, that would have never happened. But I inherited that war. That was Joe Biden, Zelensky, and Putin. I came into the situation, and it's a mess. And I will say this. I watched an operation last night that was so precise, that was so brilliant. I mean, it was incredible. If we had our people, like this general and our people involved, that war would not have gone on very long, that I can tell you. That war, to use an old term, that war has become a bloodbath, and we want it to get stopped. Thank you very much, everybody.
All righty. Just a little over an hour there. President with his statement. Hold on. I've got some audio coming in here in Spanish because I have a lot of tabs up right now, and I don't want Spanish in my ear or in your ear. There we go. Okay. President's remarks. He had prepared statement that, of course, he bobbed and weaved and improved around a bit, and then he handed it over to Pete Hegseth, then Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Kane, General Raisin Kane, and then Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Also up there with him, he was flanked also by the CIA Director John Ratcliffe, who did not speak, and also Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. He also did not speak. That was from Mar-a-Lago. I'll give you a synopsis, if you joined us late, of some of the high points there and some of the questions that then took place. I've also got some more reactions that have been coming in. We've got a Democrat reacting, of course, criticizing. I'll tell you exactly what the critics are going to say about this in the immediate aftermath, and certainly what will be a part of the news cycle tomorrow and on Monday. And some of the critics, by the way, will also be coming from sort of the MAGA influencer, isolationist wing. I was about to say right, but I don't know if that's necessarily the right anymore. I'm not sure. I don't want to characterize it one way or the other, but he will get some critics from the MAGA influencer world because what you heard right there from President Trump is, there's no other way to put it, regime change. It is regime change. We have just lawfully, by the way, this was not an illegal act, and it's important to emphasize, you kept hearing it over and over again from Secretary of State Marco Rubio as well as Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, that this was a law enforcement operation backed up and supported by the military. There were open indictments for Maduro and his wife. The Justice Department and the FBI, I'm guessing, were taking the lead in terms of setting up the paperwork for the indictment and setting up paperwork for the apprehension of this man who has committed crimes against the American people. The military was utilized to support that law enforcement endeavor and to seize him and bring him to justice. By the way, if you missed it, he is now on board. This was posted by President Trump on social media. That is Nicolás Maduro, a photograph taken of him handcuffed, blindfolded, ear-muffed on the deck of the USS Iwo Jima. The president revealed that he will be brought to New York initially, and then there will be a discussion as to whether he will be tried in New York or in the Southern District of Miami. He also said, and now here's where you're going to hear most of the reaction and criticism and where the majority of the questions from the press came from right after this action, and that was, quoting the president now, "We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicial transition." He went on to say, "We can't take a chance someone takes over without the good of the Venezuelan people in mind." Once again, quote, "We're going to run it." That's regime change, and that's something that the president has been highly critical of in the past. Now, when challenged on the United States' mixed track record in ousting a dictator and helping to run a country until a free and fair election can take place and there's stabilization there, one of the reporters said, we got a mixed track record in the past couple of decades in doing things like that. And, of course, you think about Afghanistan, you think about Iraq, And the president's response was, not with me, they don't. And then he cited other military strikes that we've had against military figures or against, like Soleimani, the Iranian general who was in charge of the Red Guard in Iran, which took place, ironically, 6 years ago today, under the first President Trump term. The difference there, though, is those were military strikes that were surgical and isolated and targeted. And now, in the immortal words of General Colin Powell during the first Gulf War against Saddam Hussein after he invaded Kuwait, his admonition to President George Herbert Walker Bush in 1991 before that military action was, you break it, you bought it. You go in there, you remove him from power. You can't just leave and leave a vacuum and leave the dysfunctional, corrupt apparatus and the deteriorating infrastructure there, because it will be chaos. And it could end up even being worse than what you're removing right now. And clearly that seems to be the focus here from the president and his team, where they don't expect to leave a vacuum there. The president said, we're going to run it. And this will be one of the top criticisms from the left. Democrats will be screaming about this. They'll also be screaming that they weren't informed ahead of time. The president addressed that. First Secretary of State Rubio addressed that and said, listen, this is a law enforcement operation. It was a trigger operation. We're not obligated to inform Congress of such a thing based on the circumstances here, but we told them immediately afterwards. Also, then the president chimed in rightfully and said, well, they would have leaked if we had told them. All right, some other things, and I want to get to some of the other reactions that we've got from the vice president, from Congressman Ro Khanna, who has gone to social media about this, and also a video posted by one of our faves, Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee. Some other reactions that we're seeing here, and keep your reactions coming, by the way, in our live chat, too, because we're going to go a little bit further. This is such a big story. Let me just say, real quick analysis. Well, I'll get to my analysis after I reiterate some of the highlights of this track. They said that Maduro and his wife will face criminal charges. Like I said, they're heading to New York now, but they might stand trial in Miami. General Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, gave details. He said that the planning for this began months ago. Every component of our joint force was used, including the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and the Space Force. They studied him for months, Maduro. They studied Maduro on how he moved, where he went, what he ate. They studied where his pets were and what pets he had. And according to General Kane, they picked the best day and the best moment to minimize danger and harm to civilians and to American forces. And by the way, seemed to have worked out. We don't have the number of Venezuelan military that were killed or injured in action here, but we do know that the U.S. suffered no fatal casualties in this operation. They also utilized 150 aircraft, including F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, AE-18s, B-2 and B-1 bombers. My guess is that the bombers came from U.S. bases in Texas or Florida. Not a long trip for them, certainly not long compared to the last bombing run that they had to make halfway around the world to Iran. I'm guessing that the fighter jets, though, the F-22s, 35s, and 18s, all came from the decks of carriers, along with the helicopters that were deployed here. The force, the Delta Force, now he didn't use the term Delta Force. I don't even know if the Army uses the term Delta Force anymore, or if they use CAG as the description for the Army Forward Special Operations. You know, you've got your Navy SEALs, you've got your MARSOC for the Marines. The Army has their special forces, and it appears that they took the lead on this operation. And according to General Kane, they had been hiding in the clutter and terrain just outside of the compound for God knows how long before they actually took up this operation. I'm looking forward to the movie made of this. At 1:01 Eastern Time, 2:01 Venezuelan time, they hit the compound where Maduro was. They were met with some resistance and force. Apparently, Maduro tried to get into his safe room, which was a steel-enforced room with a door. He got to the room, but he was unable to close the door in time. President Trump noted that even if he had been able to close the door, they would have been able to make it through that steel within 47 seconds, he said. By 3:29, under 1.5 hours. After less than 2.5 hours after the operation began, they had Maduro and his wife in custody and out of the country. One aircraft was hit during the operation, and then, but that aircraft was still able to fly, complete its mission, and come home. So we lost no equipment in the assault either. A remarkable day for the United States military. God bless the United States military. There was a whole lot of talk about oil, and I want to get to that and give you a little bit of a historic perspective on the oil. You heard the president talk about how the regime seized the oil. It was the Chavez regime, by the way. Maduro succeeded Chavez. That is a fact, and I'll show you. I have the historical data to back up the fact that it was illegally seized, and of course the American left celebrated it because big oil. I want to show you those news reports at the time when this happened, 2007, and how the media covered it at the time. I'll show you that in a second. First, though, as promised, here's some more reactions. This from the Vice President, J.D. Vance, who is in Ohio right now, his home state of Ohio. He was not at the press conference, but he put out a statement saying the president offered multiple off-ramps, but was clear throughout this process the drug trafficking must stop. The stolen oil must be returned to the United States. Maduro is the newest person to find out that President Trump means what he says. Kudos to our brave special operators who pulled off a truly impressive operation. And PSA for everyone saying this was illegal. Maduro has multiple indictments in the United States for narcoterrorism. You don't get to avoid justice for drug trafficking in the United States because you live in a palace in Caracas. Again, I want to reemphasize, you heard that a lot in the press conference here, that this was a law enforcement operation to seize a man who was under indictment by our Justice Department. That, of course, is going to be the legal rationale for this military strike. A Democrat, Ro Khanna, congressman from California, who believes he's going to make a run for the Democrat primary for the nomination of president. He, of course, immediately criticizing this, trying to draw a wedge, by the way, between the president and his base. He says Donald Trump betrayed his MAGA base today, launching a war of choice to bring regime change in Venezuela. Hey, if you consider yourself President Trump's MAGA base, would you let me know down below if you agree with that? Do you feel betrayed by this? Is this something that you didn't think the president could or would do? Do you think that he is betraying his campaign and what he promised you when he ran for president? I'd love to get your reaction, because Ro Khanna, Democrat from Silicon Valley, California, he thinks he knows the MAGA base better than President Trump. We keep voting against dumb wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya, but our presidents bow to a foreign policy blob committed to militarism. Boy, listen to the buzzwords. He's going to be on Tucker or Candace's show tomorrow. They get us entangled in conflicts abroad while ignoring the lack of good jobs and high costs for Americans at home. We will. What will we say now if Xi Jinping wants to capture Lai of Taiwan or Putin tries to capture Zelensky in Ukraine? The times call for a movement of the American people to stand against bloated defense budgets and warmongering. We need statesmen who will heed the advice of Washington and our founders and invest in jobs, healthcare, childcare, and education for our people. By the way, that's exactly stolen from the playbook of Barack Obama, who ran against foreign wars in 2007 and 2008, said, why are we building daycare centers and hospitals in Afghanistan when our daycare centers and hospitals are crumbling here at home? And after 8 years of war and fatigue, that resonated, and people went along with it. And they said, you bet, that's right. What about here at home? But of course, Obama didn't do anything to stop those wars. He continued everything for 8 years. And by the way, things got worse and worse and worse. So don't buy into that, because none of it is true. Here's Tim Burchett, congressman of Tennessee. He addressed the question as to whether Congress should have been informed.
Hey everybody, Tim Burchett. I'm sure everybody's waking up to the news of what's going on in Venezuela right now. They took out Maduro, the dictator down there. He was convicted in drug court. He's a narco-terrorist. They pumped tons of that junk into our kids' veins in this country and would do absolutely nothing to stop it, funded by those folks. And he took over Venezuela several years ago, became dictator, seized all the oil production, and currently is the Chinese delegation, Chinese Communist Party, was meeting with him, and we believe they were orchestrating a partnership with that oil. And of course, they would use that oil when they tried to move on Taiwan. They'd need that major military operation like that. So it's really a two-pronged type deal. We took out a drug dealer and we preserved peace in our friends Taiwan in one swoop. Of course, the media is going to be pitching a fit that they were not, and the left wing of our Congress is upset that they weren't briefed on this. Of course, they weren't briefed. They would have run straight to the media. The same thing they did when Soleimani was taken out. Trump took him out with a strategic missile strike. And so, it's, as you see on the History Channel, what happens with drug dealers, thugs, and international thugs and dictators and mobsters. They always either swing them by a rope, shot in some alley, or take an international perp walk and getting ready to do some serious time. And that's what's going to happen to Maduro. He's been seized, and his wife, DEA, had him. And so I think he'll be away for a long time. And I've said it many times, you know, I don't know that I want Donald Trump teaching my Sunday school class down here at the Baptist Church. But dadgum, I love him in the White House. So we'll see what happens. He's going to brief the country at 11 from Mar-a-Lago. Thank y'all for sending me here.
Yeah, and of course, that briefing is what you just witnessed yourself. One more item here of analysis. I do want to fill you in on the oil situation and the history there, and I will. I also want to give you my analysis on how this move right here and the fact that we're going to stay in country until a stable government can take over, that has shifted the ground of American politics now for the rest of this year and maybe beyond. This one move, as President Trump said, this is a big deal. This is a big move, what happened. I want to get into that, too, real fast. So we're going to bring in our friend Tony Schaefer, who now joins us. But first, before we do, actually, let's bring Tony in so he can comment on this. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer retired from the U.S. Army. He is an intelligence officer, CIA trained, and apparently they just had you on Newsmax there, Tony, while we were waiting for the president's
I work for him,
remarks.
so I have to.
Oh, I guess you're on the pay. Yeah, we're not paying you a damn thing, Schaefer, so don't expect a paycheck. I'll buy you a drink.
I know. Don't remind me.
Take a look at Kurt Schlichter, our mutual friend Kurt Schlichter, retired colonel. He says 10 best things about Trump's Venezuela victory. Number 10, America's enemies are terrified. Would you concur with that? Are they talking in Moscow and Beijing and other hotspots? Tehran, are they looking at this and they're kind of wetting themselves?
Yeah, this is what we call a tactical operation that has strategic effects. And Larry, it's huge effects. I mean, think about the optics. Last night, Maduro was meeting with the Chinese, as you were just talking about, hey, we're gonna buy all this oil from you. And it's like, yeah, I guess you won't. And the delegation's still there. It's like, yeah. And then the Russians are upset because, Russia acknowledged that they were working with Maduro on the same set of issues, helping move, buy and sell illegal oil, because that's what the Russians have been doing to fund their effort, And so they're upset. It can do absolutely nothing. And of course,
Tony,
Iran, the other
on that, real fast, Tony, though, on Russia, and you know this better than I do, so clearly that's why you're here. Did Russia have military assets in country? I have a vague memory over the last 10 years or so that there was some sort of Russian military presence there, or am I just misremembering?
So there has been, and I'm curious. I didn't come up today during the press conference. What happened to the foreign contingents there? Because Iran has one, Russia has one, and China has one. China's been acknowledged as they had folks there, but it was funny. There's a thing on my X feed. Well, there's a thing on my X feed where Maduro is bragging about how the Iranians give him this great missile defense system. He's like bragging about it. It's like, oh yeah, the IRGC, the Iranians give it to me. Well, it's a Russian-based system, Larry. It requires Russian technicians to install it. So I just note to the Russians, you may want to rethink how you install air defense systems. Just saying. I don't know.
So yes, all the best people are pissed off today and scared. Russia, Iran, and China. We'll get to Cuba in a second, but that's a good trifecta. Number 9 from Kurt Schlichter. Democrats went from siding with Somali fraudsters earlier in the week to communist narco-terrorists who ignored democracy by the weekend. It's true. Just politically, the Democrats, the political left in America, they instinctively, reflexively have to oppose anything Trump does. So they're going to have to twist themselves in knots. Did you see what Ro Khanna put out there? What do you think of the American people's temperament for this kind of action and how this is going to fall domestically?
So I think you're going to have Democrats who secretly agree with what we're doing, because President Trump did state this. that even the Biden administration said that Maduro was not the legitimate president. That was policy. That's U.S. policy. So it's interesting that you now see the left. Can I use the term whining like little bitches on the X platform?
Yes, sir, you can. That
complaining
does
about
make us that makes us superior to Newsmax, Tony. You can, in fact, say that, and I appreciate it.
I can't say that there, but I can say it. But it's true. You go out there right now and look at all these left wing nut jobs, wing nuts, and they're complaining about the fact that that President Trump executed a policy that Joe Biden was for, the removal of Maduro. He didn't have the any number of things to do it. And we did it. And this is the other thing, too. And Marco Rubio said it very clearly. It's like, look, D.C. is full of people who talk. You and I both know that, Larry. People talk all the time. They talk a great game, but nobody acts. So that's the difference, the political will to act. And President Trump mentioned Jimmy Carter, which was the failed hostage attempt, rescue attempt, Desert One. That was horrible. And so I suspect, and I don't know this because I did text with someone who we know, but I don't want to say who. But I'm pretty clear that when President Trump said do this, he said, you guys figure it out. You guys do it. He wasn't in a White House like Jimmy Carter trying to tell the military how many helicopters they were allowed to use and not use. I think that's a big factor in success. Let the military and our military intelligence do their job.
That's a great point. And you even have to go back to Carter. Word is that Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, and Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State under Joe Biden, were intricately involved in planning the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan, and we see how that worked out as well. Not that Mark Milley was any sort of military genius and he could lend anything. By the way, I want to let everybody know, if you want more insight from Tony Shaffer and what he brings to the table, a couple options. ColonelTonyShaffer.com. You got to spell out Colonel, and no one knows how to spell Colonel. It's a stupid word, but it's Colnel. I don't know. Or you can check out Tony Shaffer Files on YouTube. Tony Shaffer Files on YouTube. Okay, back to Kurt Schlichter here. Libertarians are upset is number 8. We like that. Number 7, unleashing Venezuela's oil production will screw the Iranians and the Russians. You heard from President Trump a lot about oil today. And it's funny, we used to shrink away. It's like, you don't want a war for oil. We can't have a war for oil. No, he was leaning into it. He says, you're damn right we did this for oil, because as far as he's concerned, it's partly our oil.
So what is ironic here is that we, the United States, to include really the first Trump term, although I think he wanted to do something about it, he didn't. Larry, there's a huge global market for illegal oil. Tankers who don't actually have insurance. They're not registered with Lloyd's of London. They don't fly any flag. And this has been going on for a long time because countries like Iran sell their oil illegally to China. The Russians engaged in this. That's how Russia's been, basically funding their war. They sell oil via this clandestine system to a third party like India. And then the Europeans buy it, pretend they don't know. Well, no more pretending we don't know. President Trump jumped right into it. And I think you're going to see 40%. There's an estimate I saw, 40% of all global transport of oil was either illegal or illicit. 40%. So that's why everybody's screaming to include the Russians right now, because President Trump said, we're not going to pretend we don't know. We know we're going to act.
Yeah, and that screws Iran, as if they aren't screwed enough after what we're seeing on the streets of that country right now. That's remarkable. And there's estimates right now. Most experts will tell you that Venezuela is sitting on the #1 oil reserves in the world. That includes the Middle East. All right, number 6, we blew up Chavez's tomb. I didn't see that. Was that? I mean, during the operation, one of those helicopters sent a rocket at Chavez's tomb. That's amazing.
So, and I've been on operations like this, and I've been on the planning. So, knowing President Trump, he was probably briefed on Pete Hegseth, and Pete said, "Hey, by the way, while we're there, there's this thing we could kind of take out because we're going to be there anyway. Are you okay with us expanding some ordnance on it?" And Trump probably said, "Oh yeah."
Oh, I think that'll send. Yeah, it'll piss off Sean Penn.
So I don't doubt it
do it
at all.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I think it would be very symbolic. And we'll probably hear
It was very symbolic. We're getting some lag with you, Tony.
Yeah.
So we'll wait for your Wi-Fi to catch up. All right, number 5. Everybody who had doubts about Pete Hegseth, who has to contend with the fact that our recruiting is through the roof, Iran has no nukes, and Maduro is worried about picking up the soap. In other words, I keep hearing that. I was told Pete Hegseth wouldn't even make it to his confirmation hearings, let alone get to a floor vote in the Senate 1 year ago. But now, I mean, you can't argue with his success as Secretary of War right now, despite some criticism that's still quite loud within the Beltway in D.C.
Yeah, Larry, and I use your. I'm just going to admit it. I use your stuff as show prep. You did a great job back on. It's called. Larry, I think it's your. Is that your name? I think it's. And
Larry,
you did a
can call
great
me Larry.
dissertation on all the Trump, all the issues regarding Pete Hegseth. Yeah, that's right. I know that. I thought I knew you. Anyway, but the point being is you did a great show. I don't know which one it was. You may want to highlight it, where you went through all of this in about a 10-minute overview of all the things they said. Oh, Pete's done. Let me tell you something. I'm not saying this because he's a friend. Pete Hegseth has done an amazing job of leading that organization. And Raisin Kane, General Raisin Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane has been doing an amazing job. And notably, think about this. There was not even a hint of a leak regarding the planning, rehearsal, and execution of this mission. Think about that, Larry. And everything leaks in this town.
That is a great point. That is a great point, especially the Pentagon. And this tells you, and by the way, let's not forget the fact that Pete Hegseth kicked out the old entrenched legacy corporate media that covered the Pentagon, and they were there. They were getting all of those leaks, Tony, that would end up all over the place before an operation or during an operation, and that can't be overstated as well. Real fast, back to the list. Number 4, the video of cheering Venezuelans. We played many of them here on the stream earlier before the press conference. Incredible to see. Number 3, Trump has made the Monroe Doctrine great again. He mentioned the Monroe Doctrine quite a bit. Number 2, the Cuban communists are literally wetting themselves. And finally, number 1, it was the Army and Delta Force instead of the Navy and the SEALs. Just because Army lost the football game, it's like you guys, you had to do so. Yeah, there you go. All right. No, it's fine. We're
focused on other things.
That's true. It's true.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, there are a couple points to add to what you're saying. First off, regarding.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, you know what? This lag is too rough. Tony, we're going to reset our.
Yeah. So what I was going to say, Larry, is a couple of points to add to.
You're delayed by about 20 seconds. So reconnect. We will bring you back in here, but you got to reconnect because I want it to be live because we got to delve into more issues with Tony, including his experience. See, he used to work with the military on operations in Latin America, specifically with these cartels. And so that's why I wanted to bring Tony in here. As an intelligence officer, he used to work on planning operations like this. Oftentimes, we've been planning operations like this for decades. We very rarely get to actually do them. So we're going to reconnect with Tony any second now, and then the lag will be over and we'll be timed back up. Let's get to your super chats while we wait. Ball State alum, hey Jeff, Happy New Year to you. $10 super chat. They black-sided his drug dealing ass. They really did, and apprehended him and got him back in. I'm just going to let Tony know that we're ready for him to reconnect. Stand by. All right, back to your super chats. A $5 Australian super chat from Rubate. I hope there's more to this than just Maduro. Obviously, it could end up in a much worse situation if there was no plan. Happy New Year from Australia. Happy New Year to you, mate, as they say. And I got to think that there is a plan here. It sure sounded like there was a plan. They're not going to divulge it at this press conference. It's funny. I don't know if you noticed when he was asked who's going to be running the country in the meantime, he said, well, the people behind me. And Marco Rubio, who already has like 7 jobs right now, if you looked at his face, he was like, wasn't exactly like that. But yes, wait for the memes all over social media and on X. of Marco Rubio discovering that he's now going to be the president of Venezuela. All right, more super. God's best friend. Happy New Year to you, GBF. £2 super chat. Venezuela to supply Iran with voting machines. Yeah, exactly. You're not wrong. Iran is next in the mix. All right, let's bring Tony back in here if we can. Tony, thank you for that. Just want to get the lag done. Go ahead. Expand on everything that we just talked about on this operation, but then if you can bring to our viewers and our listeners your experience, because as a former intelligence officer, I know that much of your focus, dude, anybody who comes and visits D.C. and goes to the Spy Museum, you'll see videos of Tony Shaffer talking about his work in international intelligence, specifically with the drug lords and the cartels in Latin America. Go ahead, Tone.
Yeah, so real quick on that point, Larry's been to the Spy Museum. I did a special tour for you and Kurt. You know, remember that? Yeah. We all went through. And and shout out to my friend Colonel retired Chris Costa, who runs it. He's the executive director, good guy. We were in combat together. But to your point, if you go to the Spy Museum website, there's my Bond moment. You can Google Tony Shaffer Bond moment, and I won't give the details here, so people could go check it out. But what's not said in the video, that event was on a counter drug event. So, but one of the things I wanted to add to the situation here is that regarding this whole thing regarding Pete Hegseth, just back on that one quick moment, Larry, one of the things you said, I think, in your dissertation of him is that, oh, he's going to fire people so the Pentagon doesn't have enough people to effectively run operations.
Right.
I guess he fired the right people, right? I'm just saying, you know.
Yes. That's a great
guess,
point. I know. Anybody who looks at any agency in the United States government and says, well, you know, if you start firing people, then nothing's going to get done, have not been paying attention for the last 5 decades in this town.
Yeah. So back on this. So the reason this was successful, there's 3 reasons. First, and foremost, you'd agree with me on this, I know. Political will. President Trump had the political will to do what was important and necessary. And yeah, I don't agree with Ro Khanna. I think maybe he missed his estrogen shots this morning. I don't know. Because clearly, America first is not America only. This is something people don't understand who are not MAGA. And I'm a Reagan guy. You know who my friends and mentors are, Larry.
Yes.
And the issue is this: how do you use military force to achieve specific policy objectives and not damage the United States? Well, President Trump did that. This was a specific use of military muscle, effective use of military muscle in a precise way that resulted in a 10-minute war that we're now in charge of Venezuela. It's like, okay, yeah. And secondly, regarding the actual military aspects of this, the U.S. military has been looking at this target set for the last 30 years. As I mentioned, in the 90s, I actually was the senior clandestine intelligence advisor to the senior intelligence officer at the Joint Interagency Task Force East, which is now Joint Interagency Task Force South, the Key West of the Truman Annex. So we know the region, we know the details of how these things work. And in this case, as President Trump alluded to, we knew down to the way doors opened and closed within Maduro's daily routine. I won't tell you how we did it. And General Kane was very careful not to give up tools, techniques, or technology. But I can tell you, Larry, we sent people in, and we use technologies we don't acknowledge we have to do this sort of thing on a regular basis. So that's another thing. We were able to do it because we do actually train to the standard that the mission was executed last night. So that's important. And third,
Tony,
just as kind of an issue relating to the military, Pete Hegseth has restored a warrior's ethos. Larry, it's amazing what you can do when you're told to believe in yourself and be proud of the uniform you're wearing. And we do fight, despite the fact we always make fun of the Army and Navy, you and I, Larry, because we have different allegiances to the services. We fight as one military, and we're effective in doing so.
Yeah. Well, Tony, listen, obviously it's always in good fun. First of all, I didn't personally serve. I just have family members who are currently serving in the Navy and Marines. And so I would never.
Right.
But for just, equal time and full disclosure, my brother-in-law is Army. So I mean, you can't win them all, right? Back to what you were just alluding to with regard to Intel. With regard to Intel, yes, General Kane said they were observing for months now how he moved, where he went, what he ate, what his pets were. They were picking the best day to minimize danger and harm to his security forces, as well, of course, to our military. And I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit. It was noteworthy, I think, that when you saw everyone who was standing, not everybody spoke who was standing with the president, but CIA Director John Ratcliffe, former congressman and now CIA Director John Ratcliffe, he was amongst the people standing up there next to Secretary of State Marco Rubio. This obviously is a huge, huge success for our military, but it's an intelligence success, one that our intelligence community has not enjoyed in recent years.
Yeah, I'll be blunt. There's a reason why John Ratcliffe didn't speak. Is because CIA was not as involved as I think they would have liked to be. Within the context of military planning, and by the way, Larry, full disclosure, that's why people like me exist. We go to CIA training, but as soon as we're done, we go back to the Pentagon, to the Department of War, and we use our skills and trade for purposes of supporting military operations. That's what we do. And so while the CIA guys are all situated to go to cocktail parties and embassies, we reading my book, Dark Heart, go on air assaults with the Army Rangers, as well as we have to go to the cocktail parties as well. Just saying. It's just, we're involved more directly. And this was, by all intents and purposes, everything I've heard was a military operation. We have special units that you kind of alluded to, that General Kane alluded to, that have very specialized capabilities, which I still can't get into. But suffice it to say that when given the green light, we can deploy an array of individuals and technologies which will allow for a highly detailed, very granular picture of any given target, to a point of where, we probably knew what Maduro would eat before he knew it. Just saying. And that's why this was successful, because when we have to, we can go in. There's one book I do recommend people read. I don't think I have it here. Oh, I do. If people want to see how we do this sort of thing without giving away secrets, I'm not making any money off this. I'm just saying. My friend Mark Bowden wrote a book called Killing Pablo. This is from 1992. The book is. This is when we went after. So what I can tell you is, if you want to know more about how we do things, this is a good way of learning without, giving away anything how we do it now.
Right.
A lot of things have changed since the 80s, just saying. But
yes.
we have learned how to use technology and personnel in a very special way we don't want to acknowledge we can do. Just saying.
Very cool. And books like that, of course, are all submitted for review from the military and from the intel communities, and much is redacted and edited.
Well, no, that one isn't. Mark Bowden's book wasn't, as a matter of fact.
Really? Oh, all right.
Well,
I just say that because your book,
was,
Operation Dark Heart, about our initial actions in Afghanistan after 9/11. I have one of the versions that actually, you just printed it with all the redactions. It's all blacked out. Yeah. It's very funny to read it that way, with all the lines cut through it and stuff. It's like reading, the Epstein files, but more engaging, actually. Tony, we got to leave it there. Thanks for throwing shade at the civilian intel forces in D.C. That's always fun. Tony Schaefer, using his sources and his know-how, assures us that this is mostly a military intel operation. Sadly, from this point forward, most of the news and commentary that you're going to see on cable news and broadcast news and in the newspapers, it's all going to be about, Trump and drama and politics and criticisms and who's going to be running things, and this is going to be a quagmire. They're hardly at all going to talk about this successful military operation. They should spend a lot of time focusing on what we just achieved or what great people achieved on our behalf. And that's why, Tony, I was glad to have you here. Thank you so much for bringing your expertise.
Yeah, thanks. Well, this will be studied. This operation will be studied in war colleges for the next 100 years. And I'm not joking. It's a very important event. Thank you.
No doubt. No doubt. Once again, for more insight from Tony on a regular basis, he puts out a lot of content. Go to ColonelTonySchaefer.com, ColonelTonySchaefer.com, and he's got a YouTube channel as well. It's Tony Schaefer Files. The Tony Schaefer Files on YouTube. We're going to wrap things up here, but I just want to hit one more thing because I want to preempt what you're going to hear from the media and from the political left. And yeah, we will get to your super chats that are rolling in here coming up in a minute. I promise. But I like to preempt the criticism that you're going to hear, what you're going to see on your Facebook page from your liberal son-in-law or brother-in-law about this. You know, no war for oil. Who are we? What does he mean it's our oil and they stole it? It's oil in their land. It's Venezuelan oil. Let's just be clear on what happened here. Yes, Venezuela happens to be lucky enough to sitting on a piece of the earth that has a lot of oil underneath its ground. They didn't really know about it. They didn't know what to do with it, and they had no know-how to get it out of the ground. They were an impoverished country before American interests, American oil companies, in conjunction with the American government, made an investment in that country. And we came down and we said, you got oil here, and we can help you get it. And we can then help you sell it. And then we can help this country grow rich. And we did that. We did that right up until the point 25 years ago that they decided to elect a Marxist who sounds eerily like the Democrat Party in America right now. Talking about oligarchs and billionaires, and if only we had the means of production and the means of ownership of all of this oil, then we'd have a Marxist utopia. And of course it wasn't. It was a kleptocracy. Chavez and his family got very wealthy, and the few people that he chose to protect him and keep him in power got very wealthy. But the people in Venezuela not only were living in poverty, but they also lost all their freedoms, because that's what Marxists do. And if anybody is doubting that Hugo Chavez and the communist regime in Venezuela seized control of American property, just look at the contemporary articles that were written at the time it happened. This is May 2nd, 2007. Now, you see the headline, or the website is The Ledger, but Simon Romero, this byline in this article is from the New York Times. It just got syndicated through the International Herald Tribune, which is the New York Times international property. So a lot of websites have this article. I picked this one because it's not behind a paywall like the New York Times is, and it's not full of spammy ads. But this is the same article that the New York Times wrote at the time, May 2nd, 2007. Chavez takes over foreign-controlled oil projects in Venezuela. Vast majority of those projects were American-owned. American-owned. President Hugo Chavez on Tuesday seized control of the last remaining oil projects in Venezuela controlled by large American and European energy companies. The move to take over the projects announced in January is the centerpiece of recent actions aimed at consolidating his government's control over the economy. Are you paying attention, New York City? Are you paying attention, California? Dressed in red fatigues. He never served in the military, but these despots, they dress themselves up in military garb. Red fatigues. Red. Why red? 'Cause they're Marxists. Mr. Chavez delivered a fiery speech at the coastal oil refining complex of Jose, denouncing America's economic influence before thousands of supporters, also clad in red, the color of his revolution. Today is the end of that era when our natural riches end up in hands of anyone but the Venezuelan people, Mr. Chavez said during the speech, while speaking glowingly of important allies like Iran, a fellow OPEC member. So Iran convinces him to seize control of the oil. And I assure you, oil and the resources of Venezuela ended up in the hands of many people who were not Venezuelans. There were a couple of Venezuelans who got it, Chavez and his family. And the oligarchs, the actual oligarchs within the Communist Party. And then it got into the hands of Iran, and it got into the hands of Russia. And it got into the hands of other enemies of freedom and the American people. And we did nothing. It was 2007. Lord knows the Bush administration had a lot on their hands at the time in the war on terror. They did nothing about this. And, of course, the Obama administration, didn't do anything about it. They tried to work hand in hand and partner with them because Sean Penn and the Hollywood left and the political left in America, they loved Hugo Chavez. Why? Because he was a Marxist. By the way, I want to show you one other thing here. I love this so much. Here's the headline from the New York Times. Chavez takes over foreign-controlled oil projects in Venezuela. And I just read you the first 3 paragraphs. This was Chavez taking control of American property and American interests and American companies' property in that country and stealing the oil production that we invested in and that we spent all of that time and money creating, right? That's how the New York Times framed it. Look at the NBC News headline at the time. This is 100% legit. This is real. Venezuela takes operations from big oil. Big oil. Not American-owned companies, not American investments, not even, no. They use the disparaging term big oil because you're supposed to hate big oil. Big oil's the enemy. Who's the good guy in that headline? Venezuela. And takes operations. It sounds like the oil company, here, go ahead, take over the operations. We want you to have it, like Jimmy Carter did with the Panama Canal. No. They seized control. They stole it. They commandeered it. He was dressed in military fatigues when they did it because they did it at the point of a gun. But according to NBC News at the time, the bad guy was big oil. Venezuela takes operations from big oil. President Hugo Chavez's government took over Venezuela's last privately run oil fields Tuesday, intensifying a power struggle with international companies over the world's largest known single petroleum deposit. Yeah, oil, of course, is a big part of this, and it's taken, 20 years for justice to prevail. But why do I have a disco going on behind me? I guess it's my weekend look. There's going to be a lot of criticism. The 2 major criticisms of President Trump and this operation, because they can't criticize the military, because the military was flawless. So what they'll do is they're going to crap all over Trump because this is a war for oil. It's all about oil, oil, yeah. And Trump is saying, you bet your ass it's about oil because it's partly our oil. And it's partly owned by the people of Venezuela who have been starved to death by the communists for a quarter century, and now they're going to be able to get rich off of their country's resources, like the Marxists promised but never delivered on. And yes, it's partly our oil too. And it's partly the world's oil because it's going to be sold on the market, on the world market. It's going to bring costs down, which sadly, the real ironic thing here is this probably is going to hurt American oil concerns in the long run because the cost of oil per barrel is going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper once production is brought back up to speed in Venezuela. Sadly, because there's going to be more supply than demand. And so a lot of people who are in American oil concerns are probably going to be less profitable or make less money on the open market because there's going to be more supply. But that's okay. It's better to have a free flow of oil worldwide and for America to be independent from bad actors in the Middle East and in Russia. And even worse, we don't want to get our oil from Canada. Those guys are tyrants. All right. That wraps it up real fast. Just to summarize, once again, from the press conference, this was a law enforcement operation. President Trump, the other thing that he's going to get criticized about is that he announced that the U.S. will be running the country until such time we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition to a democratically elected president. Currently, the hand-appointed vice president from Maduro is now been sworn in as president. But that's just until they can have a free and fair election, according to Trump and Rubio. She is working and cooperating with the Americans because, of course, she is. She has no choice. He also expressed skepticism that the leader of the opposition, the woman who is Machado, who has just won the Nobel Prize, he said, I don't know if she's got the respect of the people. I don't know if she can become the leader. Let's see what happens. But he reiterated and said, we can't take a chance that someone takes over without the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. So until then, his quote now, we're going to run it. That's the other opening right now for criticism of Trump and from the media and from the left in America and from certain elements of what is considered or conservative commentariat. You're going to hear a whole lot of criticism about that part of it of President Trump. But in the long run, an incredible, powerful day for the people of Venezuela and for justice, as it appears Maduro and his wife now in custody and headed to New York to be indicted and tried on their crimes. Let's quickly get to your super chats, and we can wrap things up here on this special Saturday edition. God's best friend over in the UK with £2 says, I like the smell of freedom at noon. Happy Hanukkah. Isn't Hanukkah over? Didn't we light that last candle? Calvin Henshaw with a $5 super chat. Thanks for joining us, Calvin. Says similar to Noriega in Panama, but much, much better. Yeah, this does remind you of George Herbert Walker Bush's operation in Panama to apprehend Noriega. That was also a law enforcement operation. He had been indicted for drug crimes and his association with the drug cartels. And again, without any casualties, he was seized. But this has much bigger upside, I think. Thanks, Calvin, for that history lesson. Well done, you. God's best friend with a £2 super chat. Yes, Tucker, any comment? Yeah, I don't think Tucker's happy today. I think it was my friend Ben Domenech, one of the analysts on Fox News. He commented. By the way, he and Meghan McCain just gave birth to their third baby yesterday. I found out, so I don't know if they've gone public with that, but now it's public. Congratulations on your new baby, Ben and Meghan. He put out on X to comment on this and said, something tells me Donald Trump doesn't pay much attention to the podcasters and influencers. I think that may be right. GBF £2, a trial in New York. Why not in Tehran? Do you mean the Iranians need to stick? Because I think the Iranians will stand trial too. I don't think that I don't understand the joke about about Maduro going to Tehran. Stumbleboots, $2 super chat. You're cool. Thanks, Stumbleboots. You're welcome. JD Weatherfly with a $9.99 super chat. I'm so happy the Lord has blessed the people of Venezuela. A chance at peace through Trump. Peace through Trump. I like that. I also am just as excited the United States is on its way to being more safe. God bless America. I think we all agree with you on that, JD Weatherfly. Thanks for the super chat. DeBlongo, 5223, $4.99 super chat. Larry, do you think our honorable president would make Venezuela a U.S. territory? Love your show and love you, Larry. Love you right back, Deborah. Deb. Somebody was joking on social media. It's like, and that's how Venezuela became our 51st state. Yeah, I don't think so. I think that's rather premature, but we'll see. Buck stops here with a $5 super chat. As a very MAGA supporter, I voted partly for Trump's promise not to involve America in regime change and military interventions in foreign countries. I gotcha. Okay, so you're affirming what Ro Khanna suggests as well, that the MAGA base might have a problem with this. We'll see. I think this all has to do with what our permanent military or semi-permanent military presence will be. You know, as far as a military operation to remove a foreign leader who that we wanted to remove, this looks nothing like what we did in Afghanistan or in Iraq. This was a surgical strike. It's one and done, and it's over. Unlike what happened in Iraq, where, you know, it took us many days to even find Saddam Hussein and to overthrow the government and then to take over with a viceroy and all that stuff, in an interim government. The proof's going to be in the pudding. The devil's in the details. Militarily, though, this was a very, very light footprint. What happens going forward is going to be the big thing. And the question is the current military or law enforcement in country capable of securing and bringing order without American personnel having a huge presence there? Watch that space. Buck stops here. $5 super chat. Calling this a law enforcement action is just semantics. Yes and no, but I think it certainly it has to do with the legal aspect of whether this was a 100% military operation versus. I mean, the difference here is he is under indictment for crimes, for narco-terrorism, and so, you know. Thanks, Buck stops here. Calvin Henshaw with a $5 super chat. Make Darkheart audible. Is there not an Audible book for Operation Darkheart? He should do that. I'll talk to Tony Schaefer about that. All right. We good? We good. Thank you, Kevin. I know how much you treasure your Saturdays.
I treasure this show just as much as my Saturdays.
Well, we saw this story developing, and we knew we had to jump on board, especially with the press conference. 2.5 hours later, we're wrapping it up. Thank you so much for watching today. God bless America. God bless our troops. Keep the people of Venezuela in your prayers, and watch this space, because President Donald Trump has just changed the entire battlefield for American politics in the next midterm election, as well as for the next presidential election. This now becomes one of the top 5 issues on the table. It's an issue that wasn't even there when you went to sleep last night. But now the U.S. operation in Venezuela, our ongoing presence there, and our interaction with the oil fields of Venezuela and our ability to take back ownership of the oil operations there, that will now be a huge political issue for everyone running for Congress and the Senate in 2026, and certainly at the presidential level for 28. Trump is a transformational president. Transformational presidents do things like this. And now the conversation is completely different starting Monday. And we'll be right here for it every day, live at noon, right here. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a thing. I told you on Friday, our first show of 2026, that this is going to be a huge year, and there's going to be a whole lot going forward, and we need each other to have this conversation every single day. And boy, here we are, one day later, and Saturday, everything has changed. We'll see you on Friday. So we'll see you on Monday. You have a great day tomorrow. God bless you all. Thanks for watching. My name is Larry O'Connor, and as always, you can call me Larry.